midnight screams.
I promise, every piece I take will be painless, so long as you promise to do me the same kindness when it's your turn, he said. How many times had I heard those words? How many times had I said them to him? How many times had we made good on that deal? How many times had we not? Everything has a price. Everything. I didn't know I was paying for anything, or paying with anything until Sunday morning. My usual nightly ritual of waking up right before dawn with a guttural scream was uninterrupted. The dark of my room blocking my vision allowed me to feel the texture of drenched sweat in the sheets and scorch in my vocal cords much more vividly than I ever preferred. Another dream, with him within. There weren't many dreams I had that weren't with him. Black stubble around the chin, those piercing blue eyes, that crooked smile. A table made of wood. Soldiers with pikes and polearms around me were feasting. He was next to me. A great battle on a field, my feet splashing up, blood in puddles. He marched beside me. Topless women in a brothel squeezing good coin out of patrons. He was across the bar, a lady in his lap and mug raised to me. No matter the place, no matter the context, he always showed up. The endings were always the same, however. The inside of a dark chamber with stone walls, lit by an unseen hearth. One of us in the other's arms, pouring blood and bile from a wound. A cloaked figure standing behind us, holding a chain weaved through severed fingers and tongues. It touches us, searing pain shooting into our brainstem. It's then I wake up, trying to wipe the memory of the cloaked figure from my mind until our next nightly meeting. I brush the hair away from my face, back atop my head. Something about it felt off in my hand, like new tufts grew overnight. I reached up with the same hand and felt the strands to find the same feeling between my middle and ring finger. My ring finger. Like the hair passed through it as if incorporeal. Slowly, my other hand rose and met its counterpart and felt around the fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4. With a worried gasp, I shot up from the soaked mattress, ran to the wall, flipped the switch, and was illuminated. It was gone. The finger was gone. Between the first and second knuckle, a patch of skin grew over the knob like an age-old wound. "What the fuck?" I muttered under my breath, my panic taking away any potential for shouting. "What the fuck?" I dashed back to the bed and scanned the blotches of perspirant for any sign of red. Nothing. Rifling through the sheets next, I found no detached appendage hiding within the folds. The digit had disappeared, leaving nothing but a half-inch lump of flesh as a goodbye. My next surprise was the clock on my wall chiming 7 a.m. on the dot. I was going to be late for work. Leave it to America to pressure you into feeling bad for a late clock in when you've just lost a finger. But I needed the job, and I couldn't handle finding another. And how do you explain that? Someone would notice. Lena would notice. I swallowed my fright best I could and scrounged around my 400 SQFT hovel for a solution. In a drawer rested my sleek winter gloves, which I had retired for the season, seeing as how it was July. But I was out of time and out of answers, so on they slipped, and out the door I went. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. If in orientation, a company states they are a family, do yourselves a favor and run. The Super Steel grocery had it plastered all over their slideshow when I showed up on my first day, and after 3 years I can say without a doubt if there's a hell it has numbered aisles. I stepped into the fiery automated gates of the Super Steel, heart still pounding and mind still racing as to the location of my extremity. "Just get back from the slopes?" A woman's voice called out. Lena's voice. I snapped my head to the origin of the joke to see her standing at her usual spot at the checkout, her hair done, up, and clothes picked out as the rule book specified. She smiled and waved at me. I eked out a nervous grin and started to raise my injured hand, stopped myself, lowered it, raised the other hand, and waved back. A joke from Lena usually warranted a response from me, so when I abruptly walked away into the maze of shelves, she glowered. I rushed to the stockroom, slapped on my name badge, and spun around to dash for my first U-card when I was stopped in my tracks by David, my manager, the ever-watching eye drenched in powder blue and horrible khaki, a man of which you get the impression his much younger wife starts drinking at noon. Apparently she started earlier today, as David's face was not pleased. Not pleased less than usual, anyway. "It's 7:35. Did you know that?" He sighed. "I was awa," I began, then cut off by David's nasally piercing drone. 20 minutes, as opposed to 7:15, your start time. He had this way of getting to a point without ever really arriving at it that drove me crazy. I stood there in silence. He stared at me, expecting a response to a question he never posed, but apparently my silence was good enough as he grunted and moved on to his next subject. "What's with the gloves?" David snarked. "Oh, I looked around for any help. Luckily, I found it stacked all about. The boxes. The boxes? Dry hands, you know. Figure I'd try something different. Gloves are not a uniform standard. Get some lotion. And show up on time," David finished, then quickly walking away before I could respond. I would have worried more about David if I thought he'd be worth the capacity to worry. After that ordeal, I stormed off, a cart stacked with various super-processed cereals, and got to work. If it wasn't for the empty finger sleeve of the glove getting caught under heavy tins, I might have had 5 seconds of a clear mind. But that wasn't in the plans. I mean, really, it wouldn't be a clear mind. How could you not constantly think about it? Between the mac and cheese boxes and the peanut butter jars, I hypothesized theories. Perhaps a parallel dimension butted up against ours and other me, -1 counter, and I foozed? Or maybe I hadn't woken up yet, a vivid dream mimicking my life, trying to parse through years of trauma symbolized in a lost finger? Had I lost it a long time ago and through some complicated self-delusion thought I had it? But why would I decide today, of all days, to let the delusion go? None of my calculations added up, as you would guess. Almost done with the day, and not nearly done with my panic, I was caught off guard by a tap on the shoulder. Turning around, I saw a receding hand with all fingers counted for, connected to an arm, connected to Lena. She smiled at me. I smiled back. Lena was the only person in this town or in my life I could really call a friend. She had moved here with her parents last year to finish out high school and worked part-time. I trained her and she immediately weaseled her way into my life, a feat all my past friends said was impossible. She had good magnetism like that, knew who to pick and who they were. I mean, I've been out of school for almost 8 years and she's almost out. That's a very creepy combo if you pick the wrong pal. But she never did. She was good like that. "Hey, nerd, what was with this morning?" she asked. I mean I was already late and..." I stuttered, and she laughed. "I'm fucking with you. I was just wondering if we're still on for Tuesday." Tuesday. I had completely forgotten. The Boardwalk Festival. It was her first, and as she put it, she wanted a townie, aka me, to show her all the good digs. I didn't know how I felt about being called a townie, or being one. Yes, definitely. Still happening. Yep. I covered my absent-mindedness. Good. Now get to it, Glove Man, she said as she walked away. Glove Man? You've done better, I called to her. I'm sure I will later, she answered back one last time. Bouncing between my existential dread and the plans with Lena made the day go by pretty fast, but not enough to forget to punch out and leave as soon as permitted. As I exited the supersteel, I was warned to a presence at my right side. Before I got a chance to look, the presence spoke. "Sir?" he asked me. I turned around, and, at the sight of the man, another medical miracle happened upon me. In the onset of great fear or shock, sometimes the lungs will reverse their function and squeeze the breath out of themselves, leaving a pseudo-suffocated feeling within the user. I was pseudo-suffocating. The seemingly homeless man had that black stubble around the chin, those piercing blue eyes, that crooked smile, him, from within, the man who only my dreams allowed visitation, right in front of me. Like he leaped from my brain onto the pavement. "I think we should talk," he said. Get the fuck away from me," I stammered. If it was a hallucination, I didn't want to talk to myself in public. If it wasn't, I had no interest in whatever he brought with him. I sped my way down the parking lot, glancing back at him, to which he gave chase, but only for a moment before falling back. "It'll only get worse until you talk to me," he shouted across the concrete and cars. Nope, I had clearly snapped. I had problems, some of which affected me since childhood, but never had they manifested. Literally. I glanced back once more to see the man had gone, then immediately whipped out my phone and dialed. Asterisk. I told you, Dr. Adler. I just need a new prescription. I told my therapist after being scurried into his office. I'm not doing well off of them. Well, my boy, I haven't seen you in some months. I think a session would help me understand. Adler motioned me to sit. Reluctantly, I did. Another billable hour. Good for him. Dr. Adler was. My therapist, as you may guess. And at this moment, the only thing keeping me from blurting out a delusional rant was the fact his office couch's springs were stabbing my ass like a downed gazelle. Doctor. Adler had the same wording condition as David, although he was paid to. David was just born annoyingly vague. He pulled out his notebook and case file on me and got to work, staring me down and scratching his chin at me. I got to work figuring out a way not to be sent to the hospital. I'm feeling unstable. Like all of the pieces of me aren't there, I tried to explain. Don't blame me. Ironic metaphor was all I had. Adler scribbled a word or two down. And what is the source of this uneasy feeling? I don't know. The nightmares won't stop. My job is hellish. I have a pick of the litter for sources to my problem. But I know the solution, which is why I'm here for my Medicat. Your mother, did she reach out at all since our last session? This is what I meant, he asked this, knowing the answer already. And I know he did it because shrinks want you to get to the answer yourself for impact. The only problem was we had this mother breakthrough 4 years ago. See, I was a paying customer, and Dr. Adler knew without better quality treatment there was nowhere else to go for me. But then I wouldn't pay him anymore. So he took a note from the Bible of all television stations. If all else fails, rerun it. But there was a snag with his approach. It was something completely different. It was a missing appendage. A dream talking to and following me. I had lulled Adler into a sense of routine, that there was no more to me. Why would he have reason to assume something else? He wanted to go no further because to him I was open and shut. I couldn't go any further because what was happening to me only happens to padded cell patients. I knew I just needed the meds, so I played along. Open and shut. No, she has not. I told you we went no. Contact, I said quietly. Does it maybe hurt you that it's so easy for her to respect that wish? He asked. No, I don't know. Maybe. But I know it's for the best. People with trauma sometimes develop an unhealthy relationship with it. For the first time, your life is becoming stable, and thus you feel the opposite because it is uncharted territory. He wasn't wrong, but he scored a goal on a completely different field than mine. My mother was a touchy subject for me, one I don't care to go into right now. I knew I wasn't going to get anything from him. I didn't really, from anyone. I was never one to have groups of friends or family until Lena, and I knew I couldn't tell her either. I was used to being lonely, but the feeling of loneliness always rears its head to remind you in new and piercing ways. An unsolvable puzzle that made you not only the solver, but the puzzle itself, enthralled in its twisting mazes leading to nothing. I played, along with his act for the rest of the session, both of us catching one another staring at the clock. I stood up at the chime of the hour. He stood as well, handing me a script, and I exited. I spent the rest of the night downing a pill with water, staring at my ceiling until my eyelids could no longer take the weightless weight of sleep, forcing them to shut. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. He laid in my arms this time, crimson, leaking from a slash to the stomach that had found its way, also exiting the mouth with each rattled breath. The heat from the hearth warmed my back inside my armor. I wiped the blood away from his mouth. Anything? The woman said, her chains with bloody pieces strung around it clanging about as she paced about us, taking us in for all our mortal weakness. Anything. Just save him, I say back to her, desperation stuck in my throat. And of course, after all of this, I woke up again. I'd taken the train from Delaware to D.C. many times before. 7:53 p.m. out of Wilmington, arriving at 9:36. The tickets were cheap, and the train was mostly empty around that time. It was perfect. Tonight was no different. I sat in the window seat as usual, reading, as the train rocked gently back and forth. About 20 minutes into the ride, however, the intercom came on overhead. Attention, unidentified passenger on board. I looked up. Huh? Unidentified passenger? I glanced around the car. There was only the middle-aged woman I saw when I got on, several rows back. She was looking up, confused. What the hell? The voice overhead was different, too. It wasn't the usual garbled man's voice. It was a woman's, monotone and robotic. Do they mean, like, some kind of serial killer just got on or something? My stomach dropped. Wouldn't they say something more extreme, though? Like, hide? We're making an emergency stop? This almost sounded like they were announcing someone hadn't paid for their ticket. I glanced to the front of the car, where the LED marquee was. Instead of listing the next station stop, it said, Unidentified passenger, unidentified passenger, unidentified passenger. The letters scrolled past, over and over, jittering orange pixels. Maybe they mean someone, a Russian spy, or something? Or maybe it was just some sort of glitch? I stared at the orange letters. Unidentified passenger, I texted my boyfriend. The train saying there's an unidentified passenger on board? Really weird. It's gotta be fake, right? Or should I get off? He replied instantly. That's really weird. Maybe get off. I can take the next train up to you. Where are you? I pulled up maps and checked our location. We were just a few minutes from Aberdeen. After hesitating for a second, I grabbed my bag. It probably is just some glitch or something, but I'm not going to be some sitting duck. I turned to the aisle. A woman was standing right in front of me, the middle-aged woman from the back of the car. I jumped, banging my head on the overhead luggage rack. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, but do you know what's going on?" she asked. I shook my head. This has got to be a joke or something, right? What do they mean, unidentified passenger? I don't know. I'm getting off just in case. I slipped past her into the aisle and started for the vestibule between the cars. "Good idea," she said. She hurried back to her seat and started grabbing her things. I pressed the button for the door and stepped into the vestibule. The metal floor shook underneath me. The landscape outside the train was pure black, except for a single small light twinkling in the distance. The door behind me opened and the woman stepped in, clutching her bag close to her chest like a shield. "I'm supposed to be at my daughter's wedding tomorrow morning," she muttered, messing with her ashy blonde. "We just got back on good terms, if I'm even a minute late." I glanced at the window into the next car. It was empty, except for a single man near the front. I could just see the top of his head poking over the seat. He wasn't packing his stuff, or even moving. Maybe we're overreacting, I thought for a second. No, this is how people get hurt. Not changing their plans when the alarm bells start going. As soon as something is off, you get out. Period. My mom had taught me that a long time ago. The train wobbled and shook. Lights grew in the distance, twinkling through the darkness. We were approaching. I stepped closer to the door, staring out the little square window. The lights grew larger. The concrete platform rolled into sight. The squat brick building, the dark windows. Silver sign. Aberdeen station. We blew right past it. I stared out the window. We just passed the station. No. What? Really? I nodded. Before I could say anything else, the intercom clicked to life. "Attention, passengers. Please remain in your original train car for the duration of the ride. Thank you." The woman's voice again. Monotonous, slow. "What the hell?" the woman whispered. I glanced through the window into the next car. The man was still sitting there, completely still. No, wait, not still. As the train took a curve, his head bobbed and lolled on his shoulders, limply, as if he were. I ran back to the door of our train car, slammed the button. The door shuddered open and we slipped inside. That guy. There was something seriously. I could barely choke out the words. "I know. Do you think he was—" She couldn't bring herself to say it. It kind of looked like that. I glanced back at the door into the vestibule. It was still empty, but the marquee above the door now read, "Stay in your car. Stay in your car. Stay in your car." What do we do? I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The woman and I began talking at once. On a train, someone's dead. It won't stop. Just past Aberdeen. The operator said she'd get someone out to us. But deep down, I knew, what could they possibly do? If whoever was driving the train wouldn't stop, how could the police intervene? Set up a blockade? Possibly kill us in the crash? I stared out the window. Golden lights flew by, clusters of suburbs, disappearing back into the darkness. I swallowed. You can't survive jumping out of a moving train, can you?" "I don't think so, at this speed," she replied. Silence pressed in on us. We should "We should hide in the bathroom," she said. "It has a lock. It'll keep us safe." "It says, 'Stay in the car,'" I said, pointing to the marquee. "And you trust whoever it is putting that up?" "The bathroom doors are flimsy anyway," I said. "If someone wants to get us, they will." I closed. My eyes, running my hands down my face. Could we just be freaking out over nothing? Maybe that guy, maybe he was just sleeping. Maybe they passed the stop for some other reason. Maybe it really is just some glitch. The lights overhead flickered and then went out. "What the fuck?" I whimpered. The train car was only lit by the orange glow of the marquee at the front of the car. It was still flashing the same message. "Stay in your seats. Stay in your seats. Stay in your seats." "This is insane," the woman whispered. I texted my boyfriend. "The lights just went out. We called 911. I don't know how they're going to get us off the train." I hit send and closed my eyes. "Wait, the lights being out, maybe that helps us," the woman said. "We can hide better. What are the chances he'll find us in the entire train?" She crouched down. "I don't think we can fit under the seats. There are benches at the back. I bet we can fit there." I slowly felt my way through the darkness of the car, pressing my hands into the cloth seat backs on either side. We reached the last aisle where the seat configuration had been altered to have benches facing each other, with a space in the middle. I squeezed down into the space between the seats, then shuffled under the first bench. The woman did the same, squeezing under the second. I felt too hot. The rug scratched my arms. The metal of the seat pressed against my head. I twisted my legs and pushed myself back so that my head wasn't poking out into the aisle. We were decently well hidden. But if the guy, or whoever it was, found us, there was no way we could escape. We were trapped. We lay there, underneath the seats, for what felt like an eternity. The car rocked and swayed underneath us. My hair fell into my face. My legs ached. I knew Harry was probably texting me back, but I'd silenced my phone and it was deep in my pocket. I couldn't contort to get it out, not that I'd want. To what if they came by while I was looking at my phone and found us because of the light? I was jolted back to reality by the shuddering sound of the door opening. No, 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 no. I strained to listen. Soft, thumping footsteps sounded on the far end of the car, slow and methodical, quiet, like they were stalking their prey. The footsteps grew louder. I held my breath. Thump. A black, leather men's shoe stepped into view. No, it glistened in the orange light, almost as if it were wet. My lungs burned. "Please don't look. Please, please. Go. Keep walking. Go, go, go." They hesitated, shoes frozen on the carpet, inches from my face. Then they finally took another step, and another. The door behind us shuddered open, and then closed. I let out my breath, out in short, silent little bursts, then sucked in another breath as slowly as possible. They passed us. We're okay. We're fine. I turned my head to look at the woman. Tears were rolling down her face as she stared back at me. "It's okay. He didn't see us," I whispered. Her mouth hung open. Her lips trembled. "It's okay," I whispered again, but she didn't even blink. That's when I realized she wasn't staring at me. She was staring past me. I turned around. My blood ran cold. There was something at the door, pressing its face against the window, fogging up the glass. No, the person that just passed us wasn't it. That was just another passenger, trying to stay quiet, trying to hide. Maybe even the guy we thought was dead. It was that thing in the window. Eyes pitch black, skin ghastly white, barely lit in the flickering orange of the marquee, which now read, "Don't run, don't run, don't run." That was the unidentified passenger. The woman crawled out from under her seat. "No!" I whispered, but she was already slamming her hand on the door open button. It slowly shuddered open, and she began to slip through it. The door opened on the other end. Rapid footsteps. Out of sync, frantic, running. I saw a flash of bare feet and bare Time's hands, Time's thumping against the carpet. In seconds it had run past me, into the next car. Before the door even had a chance to close, I heard a muffled scream. And then silence. No. No, 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 no. I bit my lip, trying to stop from crying. I knew she was dead. There was no way she could have gotten away. I closed my eyes tight, trying to push it all down. Stay quiet. It went past. You just have to make it until CCCHALP. The door opened. White, bare hands on the carpet, slick with something dark, followed by bare feet. Oh God! She's on all fours. She jerkily moved forward in a spider crawl until she was at my seat. She knows I'm here. No, no, no. I held my breath as its pale ankles buckled underneath the hem of its white skirt. As it began to crouch, long dark hair came into view, skimming down to the floor. More and more hair. As it tilted its head down to look at me, it stopped just short of showing its face. I could see its hairline, its forehead. As it hung its head upside down, inches from my face, it stopped there, frozen, waiting. I could see its entire body shift as it breathed. I could hear the high-pitched rasp of its breath. A single drop of blood dripped onto its pale hand, but it didn't show its face. My lungs felt like they were about to burst, but I forced myself not to breathe, not to move. I stared at the hair and the blood on its hands, and the dirty white dress skimming its ankles. With a creaking sound, it got up. The door slid open, and it disappeared. I took in desperate gasps of air. My lungs burned. Hot tears rolled down my face. I couldn't feel my legs or my feet. "You can't leave. Don't run, don't run, don't run." That's what the Marquis had said. I would stay here forever, in the darkness, even if every nerve of my body felt like it was on fire. I don't know how long I was there, crouched under the seat, trying to breathe as quietly as possible, pins and needles crawling up my legs, my head pounding, my arms numb. But then the train slowed, the lights flickered back on, and the intercom crackled to life. A man's voice as usual, "Now approaching Union Station." I didn't crawl out from under the seat until the train jerked to a stop, my entire body stiff, blazing with pain. I pulled myself out from under the seat, hobbled off the train and onto the platform. I felt like I couldn't even walk. The bright lights dazed me. Footsteps clicked, voices murmured, suitcases rolled across the concrete. A speaker somewhere overhead announced a leaving train. When I turned back, though, I realized no one else had exited my particular train, just me, and I didn't notice the hair until I made it into the station, a long, black hair entwined around my wrist, and my skin underneath it, blistered and red, everywhere the hair had touched. Have you ever noticed that bring your child to work day sort of comes across as a command? Well, in the town of Clearview, we take that command seriously. The April they turned 13, Every kid in Clearview is required to go to work with their parents. And where do most of the parents in Clearview work? Rhinocorp. I vividly remember that Tuesday in April when I went to work with my dad. I was excited to be getting out of school, even though in Clearview, schools are closed on Bring Your Child to Work Day. As excited as I was, even as a 13-year-old, I sensed some hesitancy, a little discomfort in my dad as we pulled into the Rhinecorp parking lot. "Are you okay, Dad?" I asked. "Huh?" he said, snapping out of his thoughts. "Sure, I'm fine." But when we parked, Dad turned the car off and looked at me with that serious look that made me pay careful attention. "Everything is going to be okay," said Dad. "Just be sure to follow all instructions, and whatever you do, keep your voice down." Panic shot down my spine. "All right," I replied, hoping the inflection of my voice would yield more information from my dad. "Don't yell. Don't scream. Do you understand, Elliot?" "Sure, Dad." Perhaps I thought it was just rude to be loud in an office space. That was all, right? We exited the car, and I followed my dad into the Rhinocorp building. It was a sprawling space. We were greeted by a large vestibule with a cascading fountain in the center, pouring down water into a pool filled with orange fish and hundreds of coins lying on the bottom. Dad gave a friendly wave to the secretary, who sat behind a large marble desk, and continued beyond a set of large double doors. Here, everything looked different. It looked tan. This was back when tan was the style for office buildings. All the cubicle dividers were tan. The furniture, the desktop computers, printers, monitors, all tan. Any of my worries were set at ease when I saw this space. It was as innocuous as could be. Dad set his bag down on the floor next to his desk, pulled up a chair for me to sit in, and sat down in front of his computer. As the computer booted up, he tried to explain to me what he did, but I didn't understand much of it. I did, however, notice all the other parents and their kids walking past Dad's cubicle, somber, as if they had been sentenced to death. Again, the gnawing sense of unease crept in. After about an hour, I was more bored than anything else. But the announcement on the intercom overhead changed everything. The Rhinecorp children's presentation will begin in 10 minutes. Please escort all children to the presentation room. There are no exceptions. With a sigh, Dad stood up and put his hand on my shoulder. "Just remember, quiet." My heart was racing as I stood and followed my dad, who filed into a crowd of other parents and their kids, down the hall and into a large auditorium. The parents, all excess, left, and the lights dimmed as a screen descended from the ceiling. A grainy black and white video featuring a man in a suit began to play. "Welcome to Rhinocorp. Over the next hour, we will show you everything that happens within these walls to innovate, protect, and provide for the citizens of Clearview and beyond." The video continued, going over products, supply chains, and all sorts of things that children are not interested in. But after a few minutes, something shifted up front. The screen retracted, the stage folded into the floor, and all that was left was what looked like a roller coaster sitting on a set of tracks below. A voice sounded overhead. "Please file onto the tram. 1 per seat." Obediently, we rose to our feet and relocated to the carts. Each one progressed along the rail once someone sat down. I followed the queue until I, too, was seated in one of the carts. A voice sounded from a small speaker in front of me. "Friendly reminder. For your own safety, keep quiet for the duration of the interactive component of the presentation. The cart wound through an industrial-looking hallway, lined with red blinking lights and thick metal pipes. The speaker sounded again. "You've seen what Rheincorp does. Now you will see how we do it. Because nothing at Rheincorp would be possible without Rhine." The cart turned a corner and into a vast open room, larger than a football field. In the center of the space, larger than a house, sat a giant, pinkish, undulating blob. Dozens of thick, sinewy tendrils spanned from the blob to all corners of the room, even down to the floor. Upon the surface of the blob were dozens of pulsating pustules, hundreds of blinking eyes, and even what looked like a mouth, lined by concentric rows of triangular teeth. Just looking at the thing made me want to scream. But I checked myself, remembering what Dad warned me. Still, I looked around for any route of escape. I was at least 30 feet above the ground, no way, to get off the cart. As if reading my mind, the cart clicked, and a pair of shackles sprung out and fastened my legs to the floor. My heart was racing as I drew nearer to the thing in the center of the room. Rhine powers the entire industry here at Rhinocorp. Rhine is also responsible for our unprecedented innovation, giving our engineers insights otherwise impossible for a human being. As the speaker droned on about the monstrosity before me, a claw passed through an opening above me carrying a full cow carcass. It hovered over the mouth of the blob, which opened expectantly. I turned away as the cow fell, but when I looked back, the cow was gone. The cart was drawing close to Rhine now, so close that I could make out the network of veins beneath its thin, translucent skin. Then the cart stopped and turned toward the wall of flesh. About 20 eyes opened in front of me, each fixing me in a hollow stare. I couldn't look away, despite trying with all my might. But after a moment, the eyes closed, and the speaker sounded, "Congratulations! Rhine sees you." The cart pressed on for another few seconds, stopping again at another part of the blob. In a flash, a tendril shot from the mass and attached to the top of my head. Blinding pain shot through my scalp as my vision went white. I don't know how long that lasted, but when the tendril retracted back into the blob, the speaker sounded once more. "Congratulations. Rhine knows your thoughts." I collected myself through heaving breaths, trying my best to stay quiet as the cart moved on. The track ascended until I was sitting over the mouth into which the cow had been dropped earlier. The shackles on my legs fell off with a click, and the cart began tipping over. Slowly, I was leaning closer and closer to that open maw, pulsating in anticipation. The wet slapping of the mouth as it waited for me was the only sound, aside from my stifled sobs, though, for all my struggling, clawing and gripping onto the cart with all my might, I didn't scream. Soon, I could hold on no longer, and I fell. My body was subsumed in warm, wet flesh. It felt like I was being tossed about in an ocean of warm stew, with the occasional hard object brushing against my back or side. I struggled to escape, to find a breath of air. But warm, wet darkness was all there was. Finally, just as I was resigning myself to be digested by that thing, I felt the cold air on my skin. I saw the light. I was lifted by one of the tendrils and returned to my cart. "Congratulations. Gracious Rhine has spared your life." Trembling, I covered my face with my hands and prayed for the end of this ride. But not before I heard something worse than anything I'd yet experienced. I heard a scream ring out behind me. I whipped my head around to see another empty cart tipped over the now closed mouth. I waited and waited until the cart was out of sight, but never saw anyone emerge. The cart led me back through a hallway similar to the one I had come in from, and one last message came through the speaker. Did you know? Rhine's tendrils reach throughout Clearview. If you're in Clearview, Rhine can reach you. The cart stopped back in the auditorium, and I got out, hardly able to stand on my shaking legs. I was led back to my dad's cubicle, where he met me with a relieved sigh, but never said anything else about it. I sat next to his desk for the rest of the day, watching him move numbers around a spreadsheet, and that was fine with me.